It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution. We are coming to you from the world headquarters of Remodel Revolution, deep in the heart of the great state of Texas. I'm your host, Alex Guthrie. So glad you're here with us today. We have a really interesting show today. I have our guest, a recurring guest, Andy Armstrong from Fujitsu America, and we're going to talk about some new rules that the EPA is making us follow this year, starting in 2020, that has to do with refrigerant for your air conditioners and some other things, some other upgrades and things that Andy wanted to discuss. That'll be our first guest today. And second, we're going to talk to Kristi Miller with Outdoor Home Living. Kristi has been on the show before, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you need to do to get ready for an upcoming freeze. I know things are real warm and comfy right now in North Texas, but at some point we know it's only mid-January. We know between now and real springtime that we're probably going to get some ice and snow at some point. So I wanted to talk to her about that and how to kind of prepare for that, because you have budding plants right now. They all think it's springtime. It's pretty amazing. But first today, I wanted to talk to you about a remodeler's tip. And this is kind of interesting because I got a call from a magazine, and they were asking me to buy a spot in their magazine for advertising for my construction company. That's Alex Guthrie Construction, in case you didn't know that, and you haven't called me. And I was really interested. I thought it was interesting and telling that the only qualifications that they had for me to be in their magazine as a advertiser was the $700 fee that they wanted. There were no other qualifications. I don't know that they checked any background check. They didn't ask me for it. And I want you to understand that just because somebody is advertising in a magazine, it may be a magazine you really respect, don't take that as a pre-qualified check of that business or that contractor in particular. So you need to do your diligence. And I have a few tips I wanted to talk to you about. We talk about this with different trades that we have on the show as well. We've talked about it with roofers and electricians and other people that we've had on the show, and designers. And that is to do your due diligence. And here's a couple of things. I know I've mentioned this before more than once, but I can't tell you enough. It happened to me recently again when I met with a potential client that wanted a project done on their house. And they basically walked me through what they wanted done. It was a room addition and some other stuff. And I asked them how many quotes they were taking. And they said, 3 or 4. And I said, that's fine. So where are your plans? How do these people know what you want to do? Well, I don't have any plans yet. And I said, well, then I'm not going to give you a quote. I'm not going to give you a number. Well, can you give me a kind of a off the cuff, kind of guesstimate? I won't hold you to it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I won't. And here's why. One of the things that happens when a contractor does that is they set a very iffy expectation for the actual number. In other words, if you ask me for a preliminary price and I actually give you a number, that is the number you're going to remember. So I either am going to give you a number that's going to be too low and you're going to ask me why that bid is so much higher than the original number I gave you, or I'm going to give you a number that's so high so that that doesn't happen, that potentially costs me the project. And you're just going to say, oh, he's too high. I kind of figured that, but you know, I'll talk to the next person. And that's just not fair to you or to him. And as I told this homeowner, I said, you know, it's really not fair to the people that I'm going to ask to bid the job, because if I give you a number and it's too low, and the plumber, electrician, framer, sheetrocker, painter, everybody comes in higher, then it's not fair to them thinking that they're too high. So here's how we resolve that. We provide either a written job description per room of what you want done, or a plan. So in the case of the people I met with who wanted an addition to their house, I recommended to them that they contact an architect and get a plan drawn, because it's not something you can just put down on paper. I mean, word-wise, you can't write it out. You have to actually see a plan in place for that quote to happen and for it to be accurate. Now, sometimes people call me and they want just work done, like cosmetic work. I had one not too long ago in South Lake that actually had an entire house they wanted to redo, and they went room by room, and there was real detailed job description of everything they wanted in every room. And that was beautiful. I loved it. I didn't have a problem at all with that. And that way they could hand it to everybody they had going through there, and everybody got the same information. Now, on top, what happens when you're going through that process and you're walking through with a contractor, and you have that piece of paper and it has that job description on it, and you're going room by room, that contractor is, maybe your designer's there too. There's going to be some recommendations made that are going to vary from that job description that you've given them on paper. Don't take any of that into account if you're taking multiple bids. You want everybody to bid exactly the same thing. So they may have other recommendations. They may say, you know, that's not really a good idea. Maybe you should do this. Well, unless everybody agrees with that, then at that point, I would just say, then don't give me a bid till I get that straightened out. But more importantly, you need to have everybody quote the exact same thing, because your decision is not going to be just price. Your decision is going to be made on personality and ability and other things, like you would any other business decision. So make sure that everybody is bidding exactly the same thing, or you're going to end up getting really confused, and probably you're going to end up real confused on the cost of the project. And so
we actually have someone that's popped on with us here.
What?
Alex? Yes.
That is
first
fantastic.
Guest is
so I was just informed that we have a person on the line, and I'm going to have to put my headset on to hear this guy, because I don't want to miss a word. And I think, is it Andy Armstrong?
Yes.
It is. There he is. Look at Andy, and Andy cleaned up for us today.
Yeah,
you're in front of the white curtain, dude. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Alex. Good to talk with you again.
We're joined by Andy Armstrong. He's the VP of Sales at Fujitsu America, and Andy, you know, we talk to Andy often about different things coming up in the industry, things that'll affect you if you're putting a new air conditioning system in, or he has great advice on things that may help you make decisions. So Andy called me last week and he said, man, there is some stuff brewing at the EPA, and it's going to affect people now and down the line, and we need to talk about it right now. So I said, well, come on, big boy. And so here we are. Happy New Year, Andy.
To you as well. To you as well. It's a strange time in the industry, but one that I know that your listeners are going to care a lot about. So thought it was important to let people be educated a little bit on refrigerant. and talk about things that are pretty important to consider when thinking about your cooling system.
Well, let us have it. I mean, I keep hearing these stories, and the air conditioning guys are all kind of shaking in their boots. What's up?
Well, I'll start back in the 70s and 80s when we really started looking at what was happening to the ozone layer. R22 and some other refrigerants were really eating away at the ozone layer.
So the
And
R22 was what was originally called Freon. I know that's a brand name, but that's what everybody knows it by, correct?
Correct. So it's the refrigerant that circulates through your refrigerant or through your air conditioner and the indoor coil and the outdoor condenser, and for heat pumps as well. And it was very, very common throughout the years. And we as an industry didn't realize it was doing damage to the ozone layer and let a lot of it go free. And so that, coupled with many other chemicals, it was not solely Freon or R22, started to eat away at the ozone layer. And so we started restrictions back in the early 2000s. Manufacturers stopped manufacturing product with this refrigerant back in 2010. Fujitsu started early and didn't produce any of this after 2006. So we've not had a lot of new products with this refrigerant for a long time. What's happening in 2020 is we're starting significant reduction of the production of the chemical altogether. So if you have an older system that has this R22 or Freon, you're certainly going to be in a position where you may not be able to get it, or if you can get it, the price is going to be increasing.
Well,
so
you know, it's
Go
interesting.
ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's interesting because I was having lunch with a friend of mine the other day who's actually in the trades, and he was telling me, told him about our conversation we were going to have, and he said, you know, it's interesting. He said, I had my AC guy over to do some service work on my air conditioning system that's about 20 years old, and he told me, this is the last time, bud. He said, you're going to have to update it now because there's nothing else I can do with it.
Yeah, that's what we're facing. And in reality, the natural lifespan of an air conditioner, 20 years is very good. We see throughout the US anywhere from 12, 15, sometimes longer. But so it's time, if your air conditioner is that old and you have the R22 in it, it's time to consider something new for a couple of reasons. One, because refrigerant is going to be harder to find. But two, the efficiencies are so much greater now, and there's so many unique and exciting new technologies that can make your home a lot more comfortable.
So there was a period where you went from the R22 to a different refrigerant. What was that?
Yeah, we've gone to what is called R410A, and the refrigerant has a lot less harm to the ozone layer. But in that same time period, as we've moved all the equipment in the U.S. to 410A as far as residential applications go, commercial use a few other refrigerants, but in those residential applications. But we're just now starting conversations about replacing 410A as well, because it's a global warming gas. So it adds to the potential of global warming. So over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be starting to look at other refrigerants to replace R410A to have less global warming potential. So just more steps we're taking in the industry to try to reduce our environmental impact from our products.
So we don't all have to replace our systems. This is another phased step into replacing the refrigerant, correct?
That's correct. And many contractors have R22. They've stockpiled it for this time period when they can take care of customers. They've been recycling it and recovering it and doing a much better job taking care of the environment and doing so. But now's the time to at least look at what your situation is, understand what the facts are, and know that there's a potential that if it's July 20th and it's 110 degrees outside and your system's leaking Freon, R22, it might be difficult to get that new Freon to fill it up and make it work properly.
You might get the answer you don't want to hear.
Exactly.
So what else is going on in the air conditioning industry?
Well, it's a very interesting time because we're able to supply products and can do a lot more things now. So better now than ever before, our heat pump technology is improving, and we're seeing across the country many cities start to put limits on what you can do, or in the future, what you're going to be able to do with carbon-based fuels. So we all know that carbon is one of the culprits to global warming. And as we're burning gas or burning oil or burning LP, we're adding carbon to the environment. And that certainly aids to the global warming potential. And that is what the cities and the state and the international governments are looking at in terms of what needs to be limited. So I think now we're to the point where 80 some cities in the US and 20 states have already put in commitments to reduce carbon by up to 80% by 2050.
Well,
And
that's
that means
amazing.
reducing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big trend sweeping the country, and some cities in California have banned any natural gas on new construction or any carbon-based fuel on new construction. We have some in Massachusetts and New York as well, and we're seeing it talked about in more and more places. So
the big let's talk about heat pumps and the efficiency of heat, because this is what we're talking about in the AC part of it, is really the heat. And in the past, there's been some people that really didn't understand what they were getting with a heat pump. Because a heat pump doesn't blow out a bunch of hot air, like you get from a gas furnace. It does something entirely different. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful place to start, because back in the 80s when I started in the industry, people in the upper Midwest or northern climates altogether would buy a heat pump, and they'd expect that same 100, 110 degree air to come out of their register. And the heat pumps at that time just couldn't do that. So essentially, what happens in the air conditioning mode is we take the chemical properties of Freon, and we are able to use compression to take heat out of your house in the summertime. So we pack it into that refrigerant, take it outside, and exhaust that, and then let decompression of that gas be the cooling factor. So when it comes back inside, it feels like we're blowing cool air, but what we're really doing is sucking the heat out of the house and moving it outside. In the wintertime, what we're doing is reversing that cycle and taking heat from outside. Even when it's 15, 10, 5 degrees, there's still heat in the air, and we're using the chemical properties of that refrigeration cycle to take heat from outside and move it inside. What's happened over the last 15, 20 years is we've gotten much better at inverter technology, and that is using compressors with much better control over the motor speed and the compression ratio. So we're actually getting 100, 105, 110 degree air out of the register, even down at those 10 and 5 degree temperatures, such that it's very, very similar to what you had from a gas furnace or an oil or LP furnace. So much better technology. We can now heat homes down to -10, -15 degrees pretty consistently across the U.S. and make people very comfortable with.
Well, that was the problem initially with the heat pumps 30 years ago. Is if it got below 30 degrees, you were wearing a jacket.
Yeah,
or you were burning a whole lot of firewood. It just would not get, because I had one, and I had a 3,500 square foot house, and I hated it. It was just not fun. We knew that there was going to be not only a few weeks of us being chilly, there was also going to be a huge bill coming for running that. So are they a lot more efficient now?
They are a lot more efficient. We're able to get the heat out of the air much cheaper. I have a very good friend who trusted me, and very cautiously trusted me, but he did. And we put a Fujitsu heat pump into his hunting cabin, and he had built it well. It was well insulated, so we didn't need a terribly big system. But he showed up, and it was -10 degrees, and the system was turned on from nothing. He had the cabin winterized, so he had it completely at the outdoor temperature. So it was 10 degrees in the cabin, and he called me later that day, and he said 3 hours later he was up to temperature and comfortable. So,
well, of course, now in a hunting cabin, there's other forms of heat, as we know. Mostly it comes in a bottle.
That is true. That is true. That's one element I didn't take into consideration. But we are able to do it, and do it pretty inexpensively.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Andy, thank you so much for coming on with us today. We really do appreciate it. we'll look forward to having you back soon. We'll need to talk about some air conditioning next. That'll be our next show in a few weeks. Actually, it's not even that far away. Thank you so much. This is
Cooling season is coming soon, Alex. And
That's
I'm always
right.
happy to come on.
Thank you
Very
so
fun.
much, Andy. I really appreciate it. Andy Armstrong with Fujitsu General America. Give him, his email was up there. So give Andy send him a question if you got a question, or send it to me and I'll get it through to him. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a remodeler's tip. The hardest working and arguably most important system in our homes is our air conditioning and heating system. It heats the air, it cools the air, and it filters the air. That's why it's so critical to have it checked and maintained by the very best professionals available. It's time to contact Total Air and Heat at totalair.com. Get that system pruned and tuned. If you want to have the very best experience, you've got to hire the very best company. Total Air's employees are honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked. I never have to worry about sending their technicians out to my clients' homes. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Total Air and Heat has been a fixture in North Dallas for over 60 years. Total Air is a proud dealer of the Trane air conditioning systems, and you know how hard it is to stop a Trane, so give them a call at 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today. I got an email from somebody in Grand Prairie, Texas, and they were telling me how they're in their neighborhood, there's cast iron pipes under their houses, and they're starting to have to replace them. And he'd gone by a neighbor's house, and he saw this big giant pile of dirt. And he thought, wow, they're pulling a lot of dirt, doing a lot of digging under that house to replace that cast iron. And he was wanting to know my advice because he's thinking that he's next, and he might be. So just real quick on the history of cast iron, we quit using it in this part of the country probably in the 80s, early 80s actually. And cast iron has a very distinct lifespan, as anything does that's in the dirt. Since it's metal, eventually it's going to rust and rot out. So if you have a house that has cast iron, eventually you're going to have to replace it. And of course, we went to PVC piping in the 80s totally. Now in commercial, they're still using some cast iron. They probably always will. But in the residential, we went to the PVC. One of the differences we found immediately when we started using PVC was noise. So cast iron, if you have a bathroom upstairs and when the water's draining through the cast iron pipe, you don't really hear it. But when you switch that over to PVC, you could actually hear the water going down in the walls. And that was a big issue for a long time. We had to figure out a couple of ways to deal with that. One way is when you're building or remodeling your house and you're talking to your contractor, and if you're having to make a change from the drain pipe from, let's say, a toilet or any bathroom, it'll usually just be one pipe that goes down, and it goes from the second floor to the first floor. You want to make sure that whatever wall that's in, that's insulated really well around that pipe. If you use a heavier gauge PVC, so most of them will use a Schedule 40, which is when I say Schedule 40 or Schedule 80, that's actually the thickness of that pipe, of the wall of that pipe. And obviously, the thicker it is, the more sound buffering you're going to have. And it also we've also now started putting our plumbing in thicker walls. So most people will use a 2x6 wall just for the plumbing coming down. And that allows you to insulate it really good. If you're foaming your house, you want to foam around it. That really, really helps. And so that was one thing I wanted to talk about if you're making this change. So you're having to change from cast iron to PVC, and now your plumber tells you, I've got to completely dig all the dirt out from under your house. Well, I'm very dubious about that, trusting that to really anybody if an engineer isn't involved. because you can't just go to a slab foundation and dig all the dirt out from under it to put all these pipes in. When you do that, you're taking support out from under that slab, as you can imagine. So I can think of a few things that could create problems with. One is the slab shifting. When you've dug that pit under the house to get to these pipes, then you've disturbed, settled, and packed down soil that's supporting that. And you're going to create some weak spots underneath it. So there's two things you want to avoid. One is when they put the dirt back, you want to make sure that dirt is in there packed in really good. And they can take a machine and they can actually pack that dirt in a little bit at a time and kind of get it as well as they can get it. It may not be 100%, only time can do that. And the other thing is, it's super, maybe even more important, is you don't want water to get in that ditch. So where they're coming out from under the foundation, we don't want to create a way for water to get under your foundation into this pit they've dug to put their plumbing in. So let's talk about a couple of alternatives. The most obvious alternative is, can they ditch around the outside of the house and move the main drain system where you're not having to go under? Like if you have bathrooms on an outside wall, you should be able to ditch around the house and pull that sewer line around the house instead of going underneath. Sometimes if you have a garage that's maybe your bathroom is above a garage or your plumbing's above a garage, you can use a garage wall, go down a garage wall on the inside. Find other ways to route those sewer lines so you're not having to dig these big ditches. Now, if you're having to dig the big ditch under the house, and I understand that you're just going to have to from time to time, particularly obviously if you have a bathroom in the center of the house, it's not on an outside wall, then I strongly urge you to make sure that an engineer is involved and that they go through and tell your plumber or whoever's digging this out to how to reinforce it, where to reinforce it. And I'm particularly concerned with the grade beam around the exterior of the house, because when water collects underneath that, then we know what happens. And if it isn't compacted properly, and if it isn't put back to where the water moves away from the foundation, then you potentially have a lifting action that'll cause cracks in your foundation and your walls, which you don't want, obviously. So make sure that an engineer is involved when you do this. Also, along those same lines, make sure that your drainage along that wall, wherever they've done this work, make sure that that drainage, yard drainage, is good. And if you can put a French drain in along that wall to pick up water before it gets to where you've done this work, I'll tell you, the bigger the dirt pile I see in the people's front yard, the more I worry about whether or not they're going to be in trouble later, because I know that not everybody, it's not that they have bad intentions, they just don't know the difference all the time. So you have to really think through it. It's not a simple thing. And if you're having to deal with it, then you know that you're having to deal with plumbers and you've got a big expense on your hands, and you want to make sure it's successful all the way around. So, and I hope you don't have to deal with something like this, as I know what a hassle it is. So, I wanted to touch base with that, and we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, hopefully we'll have our friend Kristi Miller on the line with us, and we're going to talk some protecting your plants. Now, the reason I called Kristi and asked her to do this is because I think with our warm weather that's here, plants are budding out. I know I'm seeing them. And actually, nature thinks it's springtime. The other day on my bike ride, I found a copperhead snake right in the middle of the trail. If you watch my Facebook, you saw the picture I put out there. I've seen bobcats, snakes, armadillos, all kinds of animals out there thinking it's early spring. So I asked Kristi to talk to us about how to protect and get prepared for what we think is eventually going to happen. We're pretty sure we're going to eventually have some cold weather, and the plants are already budding out. So how to protect your ornamentals, how to protect your grass, things like that. So when we come back, hopefully we'll have Kristi on, and if not, we'll find something else. Sometimes it's a question of do I call or don't I call the foundation repair company? Well, what if I tell you that I know a foundation repair company that will tell you if you don't need foundation repair? That's right. Hargrave & Hargrave Foundation Repair has been in business for over 50 years, and they know the difference. One of the last family-owned foundation repair businesses in North Texas. Not only are they honest, they know what causes your foundation to move, and they know how to fix it. Don't be duped by fly-by-night foundation companies that provide shortcuts and messy fixes. Call Hargrave & Hargrave Foundation Repair at 972-442-3415. At the first sign of trouble, Hargrave uses the Chance helical pier system exclusively because it's the highest quality, most reliable helical pier money can buy. 972-442-3415 or contact them at hargravefoundation.com. The hardest working and arguably most important system in our homes is our air conditioning and heating system. It heats the air, it cools the air, and it filters the air. That's why it's so critical to have it checked and maintained by the very best professionals available. It's time to contact Total Air and Heat at totalair.com. Get that system pruned and tuned. If you want to have the very best experience, you've got to hire the very best company. Total Air's employees are honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked. I never have to worry about sending their technicians out to my clients' homes. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Total Air and Heat has been a fixture in North Dallas for over 60 years. Total Air is a proud dealer of the Trane air conditioning systems, and you know how hard it is to stop a Trane, so give them a call at 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today. Well, it's getting kind of towards that that time of the year when we have warm weather, and then we have cold weather, and then we have, like in this part of the country, we might have a foot of snow. We never know. It changes day to day around here. But last week we had 75 degrees one day. We had tornadoes that night. And the next day it snowed. That's the kind of weather we have around North Texas. So you have to prepare for that eventuality some years in this part of the country. We don't always have, we rarely actually have a consistent cold spell. Sometimes we'll have a couple of weeks of, our normal temperature right now would be in the mid 50s. Or maybe low 50s. And right now, I think outside right now, it's 75 degrees. So we're about 20 degrees over. But then tomorrow it's going to be 50 again. And so we just don't know. It goes up and down a lot. So there's a lot of things that affects, obviously. And a lot of it is your ornamental plants in your gardens. And I thought it would be a good idea to talk about that, because I know in mine, they're starting to bud out, and they're just going by sunlight and temperature. So they're thinking, it's time to open up and enjoy life again and not be dormant. But what's going to happen when the inevitable takes place and we get back down cold again? We get ice, or we get snow, or we get just cold temperatures. And how does that affect? So I've heard all kinds of things all my life about what to do. One of them is to cover them up with some old sheets, and that's what a lot of people do. And of course, that'll keep them alive, because you want to keep the frost off the baby new little green leaves and buds. The other thing they used to tell us is, do we water? They'll say, just go ahead and water, and just let them kind of get a layer of ice on them, and that'll protect them. Now, I don't know. That could happen. I'm not 100% sure. And the other thing is also what's happening in your yard is that you have baby grass coming up, and the grass is ground's warming up, so the grass is going to start growing. And I've noticed that the trees are budding, and I've always worried about that this time of year because we're going to not have all the flowers, all the little emergence that are coming up that are actually going to ultimately end up as being pretty little wildflowers and things like that. We're not going to have all that. It's going to freeze instead and have to start over. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So be very cognizant of the weather and your ornamental flower beds right now. And also be very cognizant of the fact that if your sprinklers are running and we have a hard freeze come our way, you could have some busted sprinkler lines. So stay aware of that as well. Now, I think that right now, this time of year is really when you want to start planting your vegetable garden. Now, what does this have to do with Remodel Revolution? Well, we're remodeling our yard, I guess. But this is a time of year that every year I like to talk about, is it the right time to plant? And it really is. And with some vegetables, it's a little later than a lot of people like to put them in. There's certain vegetables that you put in the fall, just let them grow all winter. And then they'll come up like onions and things like that. I'm not an expert at this. I'm just a guy that has done vegetable gardens my whole life and not very sophisticated about it. I probably do a lot of things the hard way. But you want to, right now in January, and we're talking about ornamental gardens at your house, and we're talking about vegetable gardens and things like that. This is a time when you want to plant early and protect the other things that are already in there, because I know that eventually a freeze is going to come. That was one item I wanted to talk to Kristi about, but I'm not really sure we're going to be able to get her on today. So let's also talk about outdoor living areas. It is the time of year that if you're planning on doing an outdoor living area, it is time for you to start planning right now. Actually, you might be a little late. I know that
actually,
did we get her?
We have Kristi on the line right now.
Oh, great. Bail me out, Kristi. Help.
Hello.
Welcome, Kristi Miller
Hello.
with Outdoor Home Living. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I don't have your picture. There you are. There's Kristi Miller right there. How are you feeling this morning? You're a little under the weather.
Yeah, my whole office and a lot of the staff has been struggling with this bug that's going around.
I hate that.
Now
Well,
I can't see you. Oh, there you go.
there I am. Yeah, I'll come back and forth and make your day better. So I was just getting into preparing for your outdoor living projects, patios, covered porch, whatever you're doing, arbors, whatever it is. And now is probably you better start right now if you want to plan on using it this spring. Is that correct?
Yes, I would definitely start getting the process of meeting with contractors. One of the things that we'll ask for that it makes the go way faster if you have a survey to give to them when you meet with them, or if you can send it to them prior so they have it for the records to do the designs and whatnot. That helps expedite it.
And so you take that survey and you can actually kind of blow it up and then place things where you want them.
Exactly. Yes.
And then a lot of times if you're building, depending on what part of your property you're building your new outdoor living area on, you may need to know setback, and depending on the city, you may have setback issues with the city or requirements
right
from your what's called a build line, which is where the house sits. So you almost have to line things up with the house in some cities. Some cities aren't as particular about it.
Yeah, and any of the easements that that are, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the back office because I think I'm about to have visitors in there. Anyways, any utility easements, drainage easements, that sort of thing will be called out on the survey. And like you were saying, like build lines, so that there's all the information that we need, as far as the property itself, and what we're able to do with setbacks and whatnot. It's different if you're a corner lot versus, when you have the two houses beside you. It's different rules for code.
Yeah,
enforcement.
corner lots are often really challenging because they have easements all around them. They'll have easements on two or three places, they different kind of setbacks, and not just a
Right.
building line. And another thing that comes up is if you're going to do an arbor, and particularly if you're going to have like a big pitched roof with a big beautiful pitched roof on it, you have to be aware of the roof heights. And some cities that I work in have a different requirement for a detached building like an arbor versus one that's attached to the house. And in particular, they address roof height.
Right. And in some of the older neighborhoods, too, that if, let's say that someone is adding on to her house, or if they've torn down a house and are rebuilding, that they used to allow in the city of Dallas garages to be closer to the alley. And so I've seen this time and time again that they'll either keep the same foundation or keep the original garage and just update it because you have more freedom because you're grandfathered in.
Yeah, and we've had to deal with that in older neighborhoods in Park Cities. We've dealt with that for many years. Now, some of that is because you can't move it where you want it, get it the size you want it, but you've got this restriction, or you have a
Right.
restriction about a secondary building. Dallas is particularly picky about that. Now, what are some of the accessories? Are people still wanting these big outdoor kitchens and all that kind of stuff?
Oh gosh, yeah, we build a lot of outdoor kitchens, and they
And your visitors showed up.
yeah, they showed up. I apologize. You can hear my dogs. They come to work with me every day. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Anyways, they where were we?
We're talking about accessories.
We do a lot of outdoor kitchens. Last year I probably built somewhere upwards of 100.
Wow. Now, just so everybody understands, Kristi was going to be in here with me today, but she called in sick. And so she's not feeling 100%. And I coaxed her into doing this from her office on her computer. So anyway, they're still doing. Now, I've talked to people over the years that they've spent tons of money doing these giant outdoor kits. They put every appliance outdoor that they have indoors.
Mm-hmm.
And I often have to kind of say, okay, that's super expensive. That's just like building a brand new kitchen, only maybe even more expensive.
Sinks and ice makers are expensive to put on the exterior because for it to be to code, you have to run it to the P-trap of the house, and oftentimes the P-trap is in the front of the house, not in the rear of the house, but it does drive cost up to have a sink. And an ice maker, because then you got to plumb the water over to it and the drain line.
And then you still have the same electrical requirements. A lot of times gas is not really real accessible. And so these are things that when you're kind of dreaming about your your outdoor living area, and I'll have people go, they just think they're not expensive. They're like, "God, how could it cost that much?"
Right. And the refrigerators that are outside, they're pricey. A lot of times we do like the bar size refrigerators. You don't do a full size refrigerator in the majority of outdoor kitchens, but for it to be outdoor rated, it drives the price up on those too, for it to be outdoor rated.
Well, and now speaking about outdoor rated, one of the things that has made outdoor living areas a whole lot better is the electronics that are available, that in particular TVs that are actually designed to be outdoors.
Right. If I often will tell my clients that if it's under a covered patio, and it's set back, because the price of TVs is inexpensive compared to the outdoor rated TVs. Those can get pricey, and the casing that goes around the TVs are pricey also. So if it's under a covered area and it's not going to get direct rain on it, I always tell people you can replace the TV,
Cheaper than you can
more
buy.
times than you can purchase an outdoor rated TV.
Well, and the way technology is changing with TVs in particular, that's probably not a bad thing. If you had to
Right.
replace it every couple of years, you're like upgrading anyway.
And the other thing that's changed a little bit with wireless is we used to, like if we had a full uncovered patio, a lot of people we'd install the speakers in the ceiling, and now with wireless, we've started steering people that we do a lot of Sonos speaker systems because they're easy, and you can Bluetooth it in to whatever device you're using, your TV, your phone, whatever.
Yeah, wireless has really changed our world, hadn't
Mm-hmm.
it?
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize that they had a good speaker system. Now, they used to not. It used to be really difficult to get a good wireless speaker system.
No, so I can't say enough about Sonos. They're amazing.
Well,
and of course Bose has a good system too. But I'm a fan of Sonos.
What else is new? I mean, what about materials? What are materials doing? Are they still using a lot of stone and a lot of marble?
I use for countertops. I don't do a lot of like say granite countertops. We do majority of our kitchens are in stone. I use a ton of looters. You can do concrete countertops. There's pretty much anything that you can do on the interior, you can do on the exterior, and that all is just driven by the client's desire. But the majority of the ones that we build are in stone.
Kristi,
They'll have brick. We'll do brick on the bottom, and then I've done it with shiplap. It all just hinges on what the client likes.
And a lot of it is budget driven.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And we could go all day talking about the great new materials that are available to us, and we will do that on our next visit. And I really appreciate you coming on and spending time with us today. I know you're not feeling well, and I'm probably going to pay the price for this the next time I see you, but
No, it's good.
I'll take the heat.
I was disappointed I couldn't come in today. I didn't want to get you sick.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and so does everybody at On Air Media, where we are. Thank you so much, Kristi Miller with Outdoor Home Living. Give Kristi a call if you're thinking about doing an outdoor living area, a patio, whatever. She is an amazingly talented lady. They do my work for me occasionally. Their designs are beautiful. Their craftsmanship is awesome. So give Kristi a call. And I wanted to announce today that we have a new satellite or internet deal that we've made with Texas Weather Live. It's an internet weather site, and they're really, really nice people. I actually have them on my mobile app to check weather updates and things like that. The weatherman, William Cole, is he's really excellent. And our show is going to start being broadcast off of their site as well. So we are really looking forward to that. It's very exciting to us. We also have some more projects coming up that we're going to be doing. I'll be announcing later when those come around, and we kind of get our act together on that. In the meantime, I want to thank Andy Armstrong with Fujitsu America for coming on with us today. I want to thank Kristi Miller, who was not feeling well, for coming on and spending some time with us. And I want to thank Mr. Ziggy Becker, who is our producer, engineer, director, the big boss in the studio, who always does a great job putting things together. Thank you so much, Ziggy. Thank you, On Air Media. And thank you to our sponsors. Thank you all so much. And of course, our audience, please continue to watch the show and like the show. Go to our YouTube site and subscribe. All of these videos will be up there. Hope you have a great week. This is Alex Guthrie signing off until next week.
You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle @Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.